Hello, everybody. I'm here. My name is Dr. Carol Bond, and I'm here with Mr. Nathan Lubin, and we are talking today about the value of peace, business, philanthropy, and the Rotary Peace Fellowship. We are meeting today at the Rotary Peace Park, which is now in its fourth year at the House of Friendship at the Rotary International Convention. This year, the Peace Park is highlighting the accomplishment of Rotary Peace Fellows and the Rotary Peace Centers program. This conversation today is part of the Peace Exchange Studio, a series of 20-minute dialogues pairing Rotary leaders and Peace Fellows to share insights, perspectives, and stories of impact. This session is recorded and featured on the RPFAA's YouTube channel and RI social media. If you like what you hear, we highly encourage you to like and share. So, my name, as I said, is Dr. Carol Bond. I am a Rotary Peace Fellow from the class of 2009, and I studied at the University of Queensland in Brisbane, Australia. I also earned a PhD subsequent to my Peace Fellowship at the University of Queensland in political science. And I looked at the implications of peace studies for the mining sector. And I'll talk about that more a little bit later. Right now, I work as a lecturer in management at RMIT University's College of Business and Law, and I research corporate social responsibility, equity, and policy in the energy transition. I work with large energy companies and infrastructure companies on their social and environmental impacts. I am a third-generation Rotarian, and I've served as VP of Humanitarian Programs at the Rotary Club of Melbourne, and I am now President-elect for the year 2026-2027. The Rotary Club of Melbourne was the very first Rotary Club to be founded in Australia and is now proudly completing its 104th year. Nathan.
Thank you, Carol, and I'm Nathan Lubin, and I'm a past district governor of two different districts. And in 8990's district, at that time it was 615, now 6150, that's Arkansas. And later, as I moved to Memphis, Tennessee, I was honored in 22-23 to be governor of District 6800, which is Memphis, Tennessee, and good parts of Mississippi. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Germantown, and I'm president owner of Lubin Enterprises, Inc. We're a construction company that we cover about a third of the United States, and Arch Klumph Society member with the Rotary Foundation, and support the Rotary Peace Centers. They're very, very special. I visited them. I'm looking forward to visiting more of them. What the Peace Fellows are doing are just absolutely fantastic. Having grown up in the lower Mississippi Delta, and having observed poverty, having observed discrimination, and noticing many, many things that we have that are similar to problems we're having in developing nations and problems that Peace Fellows are developing, my passion became supporting peace initiative. I've been through the Rotary Peace Activator training and also the training with the IEP, Institute of Economics and Peace, and we have to have peace. We have to follow the 8 pillars of peace if we're ever going to be successful in our communities. And Carol, do I get to ask you a question now?
You do.
Okay. As I said, I've spent decades giving to the Peace Centers because I believe in what they build. Carol, aside from the academic and business world you study, does that kind of giving register as a serious investment, or does it look like charity? What's your impression of this philanthropic activity with the Peace Centers?
Yep, that's a really good question, Nathan. So it is what I found in my study of peace and conflict studies at University of Queensland, and especially focusing on the mining sector. I think I'll tell you a little story. In the course of my PhD, I had the opportunity to interview 35 professionals working in corporate social responsibility in the mining sector. And one of the main questions I would ask them after kind of gently leaning up to it was, have you ever seen conditions of peace created by the work you're doing in corporate social responsibility? And first, they'd laugh. And I used to get very upset about that because I was like, it's not a funny question, because mining companies are often associated with conflict, but why can't they be associated with peace? And so after people would laugh at me, and these are people who've worked in Papua New Guinea, they've worked in Ghana, they've worked in Argentina, they've worked all over the world, Indonesia, and then they'd say, well, hang on a minute, what do you mean by peace? Because that seems like an airy-fairy word, and it doesn't seem to have much kind of correlation with what we're doing in corporate social responsibility, which seems, heavy, and there's international norms, there's peak bodies for different industries, and that seems like a very substantial, and it is a substantial body of work. You have reporting metrics, you have all kinds of agreements around human rights, around environmental impacts, and so on and so forth. But I said, well, when you look at the word peace, how does that correlate? And they'd say, well, and then they'd pause. And this was also part of the process. They'd pause because they didn't have an automatic response to that like they would have for corporate social responsibilities, social impact, environmental impact, human rights violations, all those things, which usually have a punitive kind of, characteristic to them, where they're going to get in trouble, they're going to get fined, the lawyers are going to come screaming after them, there's going to be a lawsuit, there's going to be multi-millions of dollars, there's going to be rioting villagers, et cetera, et cetera. But I said, but what about peace, right? What about peace? And I interviewed this one corporate social responsibility professional from Canada, and he was working in Argentina, and he said, don't tell anybody. And but he said, I use the Hebrew Bible as my guide. And he said, in Argentina, we had a large mine, and we had to hire a major security company. And in the security company, they would have rifles. And when the artisanal miners, or that's a very gentle way of calling, the people who do the mining that they're not supposed to be doing, they're illegal, because they're not allowed to be on the mining list. So they would be picked off by the people with the rifles. And the CSR officer was not comfortable with the reckless killing of human beings who were just trying to provide for their family. And so he went back to the book of Esther. And, I'm sorry, not Esther, the book of Ruth. The book of Ruth, and said that in that story, that the person who owned the land left 10% of the land around the edges of the field for the poor people to come and glean the wheat to be able to provide for their families. And so he talked to the mining company officials and said, can you give 10% of your mining lease to the artisanal miners so they can provide for their family? So you won't need security anymore, so you'll drop that cost, but you'll find a way to actually create conditions of peace between the mining company and these villagers by following these biblical principles. Now, he said, I didn't tell them I was following biblical principles from the book of Ruth. But he said, that was my guide stone. And in that way, I create conditions of peace. So that's not philanthropy, right? To go back to your question, when you put principles of peace into play, it is very durable. And I love using the word peace because it stops, as I said, the automatic conversations. It allows people to think creatively about what it is that they're doing and do the positive things that Rotary is known for, to make those contributions to human thriving and well-being and the diminution of conflict.
Excellent, excellent. And I guess it's time for me to respond to that. Carol, I'm a businessman, and I truly believe that a company, a place of business, is where people come to meet their financial goals and objectives.
Yep.
And as a very structured businessman, if we're not doing that, it's not going to last and continue. I jokingly say to the people in our company, when we have profits, should I take this money and go to the casinos and see if I can make more money, or should I invest in our people? Investing in people gives a greater return than anything else we can do. When we talk about peace, and regretfully so, in some places peace has become a partisan word.
Yes.
When you talk about peace, sometimes people say, well, I don't want peace with so-and-so because they did so-and-so. But once we go to the basics, let's go to the pillars of peace. And how do we get the peace index? How do we measure what's going? So we talk about business, we can talk about equitable distribution of essential resources. If you have a business and you have people and they are not able to support themselves with their compensation, it's not going to work.
No.
whatever you have to do to make adjustments to where you have people that can meet their own financial goals and objectives, you're going in the right direction. When you want to have peace and you think about people, you have to think about being able to develop better human assets. What do you mean better human assets? What are you talking about? You're talking about education. You're talking about people being able to grow and develop. If you want to talk about having economic opportunities, job opportunities, it means I have the opportunity to progress and grow and develop further. When we go to, as a businessman, and we go to a school in an impoverished area, and they have no idea of what opportunity is. All they know is what they see right around them, and oftentimes it's associated with crime or else associated with some type of subsidy. And we can come and say, don't get in trouble, stay out of trouble, take these courses that will give you a certification in a trade, and once you get out of school in Memphis, Tennessee, you can start off making $50,000 a year. You can make a living, okay? So then you're talking about equitable distribution of essential resources.
100%. Yeah, so one of the things that's really well said. I mean, if you need to take care of your people first, right? That is, as a businessman, that is priority number one. If you take care of your people will take care of your business, right? And you can't do that if people are in conflict internally. They need to be at peace in themselves. So at the Rotary Club of Melbourne, where I am going to be the incoming president, we have a peace park with peace bells, which has an inscription written by one of our peace scholars, Tanya Militech, who was one of our first Rotary Peace Fellows from Australia. And on these bells, there's four areas of peace. First is peace within, right? You need to be peaceful within, and that means being able to care for yourself, being able to wake up in the morning and know that you have a safe place to sleep, food in your stomach. You have to have your health. You have to feel free from incoming acts of conflict or violence. So, and this is part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You need to take care of that base of the pyramid. Then you need peace in your home. And this is the one that's really hard for a lot of people, because we inherit a legacy of relationships when we're born into a family system, but peace in the home is the second place. Then you have the third area, which is peace in your community, and finally peace in the world. So, but they're all interconnected, the micro to the macro, and I really appreciate your sense that you can support people, who are in a less advantaged situation, to take the courses, to stay on track, to get the certification, to be able to provide for themselves and their family. And that, to me, is a durable, legitimate way of thinking about peace. Peace isn't just United Nations. It isn't just major international policy developments. It is deeply personal, profoundly local, and working within our spheres of influence, we can affect the world.
As I listen to you as a brilliant academic person, and I think about myself as a very basic business person, it's very, it brings interesting thoughts to my mind. I think about structure, and that's what we do in business.
Love that.
We think about structure, we think about organization, and we also think about how do we measure what's happening. Within the community, if there's a missing piece, if you don't have good governance, we need to understand that. If you don't have good governance that can enforce the laws, or in a business, if you cannot enforce certain rules and certain procedures, do not expect to be successful.
Right.
You may be able to have what's considered a negative piece, you may be able to proceed, but don't expect to be successful. Each one of these particular pieces have to be put together. If you don't have proper education, proper training, don't expect to be successful. If they can't see that they have opportunities to progress and do better, don't expect to be successful. Transparency. If you don't have transparency of information, just as within a community, within a business with trying to develop, don't think it's going to work. If you have a school in South Sudan and they in turn are hungry, they're not able to eat good, okay, and you're trying to educate them, but they get one meal every other day, you've got to bring food. When you start bringing food, you realize that some of the things you can do, whether it be a solar well and they get water and have additional garden. Let's keep talking about peace. If you don't have good relationship with your neighbors, okay?
Exactly.
Whether you're talking about the person in the office next to you or the building next to you or your competitors, you're not going to do well. So how do you do that? You take this school in South Sudan, for very small amounts of money, they can have a new well, they can grow a garden, you can have irrigation, and the women. You've got to understand what a difference we made in Rotary.
Yes.
Once we learn that if we take the women and help them nutritionally and education, the whole family goes up.
That's right.
The guys are not bad, but we help them and they do good and they go off and work and okay. But if you want the whole family to go up, you have to start with the women.
Absolutely.
So you give them a well, they can now have a garden, they have irrigation, and let the guys work in the garden, let the women be educated, and help your neighbors with the extra produce you have, and all of a sudden that's another pillar of peace.
Absolutely.
And so as a businessman, that's the way we go. As an academic, you say, Nathan, this is right or wrong, you should change.
No, you're doing absolutely great, and I think your approach and your practical advice is so important, because one of the things I love so much about being a Rotarian as well as an academic is I get the opportunity to translate what I've learned into practical, hands-on engagement. So one of the projects I'm involved with is out of the E-Club of Melbourne. It's a Rotary Club. Aviv Palti is a past president, and Maria Hicks is a past president, and I think she'll be the president again this year. But they invited me to participate with them in a program they started in Siem Reap in Cambodia. And they're removing barriers to education for children who are still suffering from the intergenerational trauma of the Khmer Rouge, and the families that aren't as focused on education as they perhaps need to be. But this particular program, the Cambodian Rural Students Trust, identifies high-performing students from very impoverished backgrounds, and helps them stay in school, helps them learn how to give back to the community so that they can give each other a hand up, not a hand out. And in so doing, they're creating traditions of peace and an intergenerational empowerment, which I find incredibly energizing to be a part of. And watching these young people understand that we as Australians and North Americans believe in them enough to walk with them through this situation. And they're going on to be the leaders of government. They're going on to be the leaders of industry because they understand the Rotary Pillars of Peace. They are a Rotaract club themselves. So it's a really brilliant way, I think, of getting the Rotary Club network together to help a young group of children, adolescents, early adults, to really change their future. And that's what you're talking about in Sudan as well. And that's the thing. Like, I think sometimes when we think of peace, we think of macro, big, but it's local.
It's local. Each person needs to realize that you need to take part in this. It's a community. The world community. Whether what you have to donate is a couple of hours of your service, or whether your place is to donate $25 US, $250, or $2.5 million. Whatever assets you have, whatever's appropriate for you, we need to contribute and be part of this community. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and please join us in this quest for peace.